GDP was flat in quarter four. In terms of the two largest economies saw contraction. So Germany GDP shrunk by surprisingly 0.2%, and France's also declined by 0.1%. Italy stagnated for the second consecutive quarter. Ireland's GDP fell by 1.3%. Austria's economy also flatlined. On the other hand, the robust results came out of Spain, 0.8%, Portugal 1.5%, Lithuania 0.9%, Belgium 0.2%, Estonia 0.1%. Very small numbers in the grand scheme of things.
Small nations, yes. Overall.
Year on year, the euro area GDP grew by 0.9%. Let's keep moving in terms of the annual rate of inflation. So we can see there, remember, their target is for a 2%. So what we're seeing, annual inflation in euro area edged up 2.5% in January from a reading of 2.7 in December, slightly above market expectations of 2.4. This was the highest inflation rate since July of 2024, driven primarily by a sharp acceleration in energy costs, 1.8% versus 0.1 in December. Meanwhile, inflation for non-energy industrial goods remained steady at 0.5%, whilst price increases slowed for both services, 3.9 versus 4, food, alcohol and tobacco, 2.3 versus 2.6. The core inflation rate, which excludes, as we know, the volatile items, was unchanged to 2.7 for the fifth consecutive month, slightly above market forecasts of 2.6, but still in its lowest area since early 2022. That obviously leads into the monetary policy story. And so what did we see in terms of monetary policy? We saw that the ECB lowered the key rate interest rate by 25 basis points as expected, reducing the deposit facility rate to 2.75 and the main refinancing rate to 2.9 and the marginal lending rate to 3.15. This move reflects the ECB's updated inflation outlook, with price pressures easing in line with their projections. I didn't quite see that in the inflation line, but anyway.
So the Eurozone at the moment is fascinating because I think this is where we need to finish. You alluded to it before. If you're a Germany, right now you are facing some of the biggest pressures you've possibly seen in modern times. Same with France. So you have Trump's tariffs. If you're Volkswagen or if you're Daimler or if you're in some form of chemical engineering, you're really worried about this. If you're France and you're in aerospace and aeronautical engineering, Airbus, for example, you're also really worried about what's going on, and that's where the contraction. We then also have a complete seizing up of French politics. The moment they are basically stranded until July when they can do the next round of elections, nothing's going on. Olaf Scholz in Germany, he's also on the nose. Incumbency sucks right now. You are in real trouble. So that's 2 points. The tariffs are going to hit Europe probably more than any other part. I'd even argue over China, considering that it's automobiles and high-end manufacturing. That's what Germany, France, and Italy do. That's what they are.
Look, this nationalist politics that's going on,
and it's just going to get worse,
is dangerous because, again, these countries and these political parties are promising false promises. And once people work out that there's no surprises in the box and the presence that these politicians are basically promising, that's when the whole thing falls on itself.
And let's not underestimate what has happened when we are recording this, which is in the midweek of February. The talk around the Ukraine-Russian war scenario with, the possibility that the US is dealing Europe and actually the Ukrainians out of some form of peace deal is going to get louder. You are possibly making a geopolitical political call over the Atlantic because already you've seen the UK stand up and say, well, actually, we'll put troops in Ukraine.
Peacekeeping troops, but still troops on the ground.
This is where we are now entering in terms of that space. Now, I do want to point out, from a US perspective, why would getting peace with Russia matter so much? Oil, right? If you take Ukraine off the table, the oil upside pressure that we've had for the last 3 years will dissipate real quick. And
the rare earths. So he doesn't care who actually runs the country. He wants the rare earths out of Ukraine and obviously Greenland as part of their AI strategy and their tech strategy. So he's playing a big game.
Big battles to come.
Big battles. All right, so let's wrap it up, everyone. Let's bring it home. Looking ahead, we promised you at the start that we wanted to sort of give you some indications in terms of what's going to be happening. The biggest show in town is Trump. You don't know what he's going to say. He's an unknown quantity. What he says and what he does are going to be two different things. So we need to always take that into context in terms of as we know his agenda. We understand exactly what he's trying to do. He wants to make America great again. That's his simple philosophy. In terms of the Australian economy, we had our rate cut today. We've got a federal election, which will probably, I'm predicting, will be called off the back of that cut.
Yep.
If we didn't get a cut today, I would have thought they would have pushed it out a little bit more. But
Which
I suspect,
therefore, April is going to be when we're all off to the polls.
Correct. So we will be off to the polls now. It's an interesting time, right? We've got Easter and rolls into Anzac Day and everything like that. So
WA's got an election in there
yes,
as well.
they've got something in March, I think they're March. So that's interesting. In terms of productivity, we haven't really spoken much about it, but I want to keep bringing it back to this, right? If we're going to get these wage increases, we've obviously got to get movement in terms of productivity, and we haven't seen that. And so the governor will continue to keep banging her hand on the table about getting higher productivity if we're going to continue to keep getting inflation under control. Because one way to kill off inflation is to be more productive in your input costs and make a better, higher production out of the cost base in terms of what you're getting. So that is one area that will continue to be a thorn in our side generally in terms of how this country runs. In terms of, we will hopefully see less government spending and hopefully more private investment spending. But to do that, we need reforms. We need government to get out of the way. We need businesses and open markets to basically allow that to happen. Now, I also promise you that Thursday week, Bryce and I will be wearing our property hats, and we'll be talking about predictions across the property market, including recapping what we talked about in 2024. So it really is going to be an interesting time. So we did promise you our predictions. Next rate cut is
July at best.
July. Okay, that gives me a little window. I am going to, because I was happy to take May, so I will take May. I don't think it's going to come in April, but I'm going to take May. Or it's either they're going to pull. We both could be wrong.
Yep.
Whatever we do, whoever wins, we'll put the money into charity. We might even put it into Bryce's special event that he's doing in terms of celebrating his 50th. I think that's why. We don't need each other. We don't need to take each other's money.